The day humanity left the Galactic Council, everything truly collapsed, but in the most unexpected way. Captain Collins led the Coalition fleet against the crystalline Void Heralds, employing Operation-Controlled Chaos with unpredictable tactics that baffled the enemy. As human ingenuity met alien technology, the largest Herald ship shattered under their coordinated assault, forcing the invaders into retreat and forever altering galactic power dynamics. The massive crystalline doors of the Galactic Council's Great Hall towered above Commander Lori Winters as she stood in the antechamber, her military dress uniform impeccable despite the 18-hour journey from Earth Prime. 300 years of human participation in the Council had culminated in this moment, not with celebration, but with grim determination. Humanity's delegation waited silently, the weight of their decision palpable in the recycled air. Are we certain this is the only course of action? Ambassador Paul Gregory's voice was steady, but his eyes, aged with over 7 decades of intergalactic diplomacy, betrayed his apprehension. At 89 standard years, he represented the first generation of human representatives to the Council, a living connection to a history that was about to be irreversibly altered. Commander Winters straightened her shoulders. The President and Joint Chiefs are unanimous. 12 worlds permitted for development in 3 centuries, while other species colonize hundreds. Technology restrictions that keep us generations behind. Trading terms that extract more than we gain. She tapped the quantum document carrier strapped to her wrist. The terms were never equitable. They were never intended to be. Security Chief Daniel Ford scanned the waiting area, his cybernetically enhanced eyes registering the subtle shifts in the Council Guard's stance. They suspect something. The Xerelian representative requested additional security for today's session, triple the usual contingent. Let them suspect, Science Director Kate Murphy interjected, her voice carrying the analytical detachment that had made her Earth's leading xenoanthropologist. The statistical models are clear. If we continue under these terms for another century, humanity becomes permanently subordinated, with recovery timelines measured in millennia. Ambassador Gregory nodded slowly, the gesture carrying the weight of reluctant acceptance. 300 years of patience. 300 years of proving ourselves worthy. He adjusted his ceremonial sash, the blue and silver of Earth's diplomatic corps now seeming like chains rather than honors. And still, they see us as children to be managed rather than equals to be respected. The crystalline doors began to part, emitting the distinctive harmonic resonance that signaled the opening of a full council session. The vibrations sent shivers through human bone and tissue in a way the council architects had never bothered to adjust for human physiology. Commander Winters inhaled deeply, her hand instinctively checking the quantum document one final time. History will remember this day, she said, her voice hardening with resolve. Whether that memory is bitter or triumphant depends on what happens after we walk through those doors. The human delegation moved forward as one, entering the vast circular chamber where representatives of over 300 galactic species awaited. The Great Hall's architecture was deliberately overwhelming, soaring pillars of translucent material that captured and refracted starlight from the system's twin suns, creating dancing patterns across the tiered seating, arranged in concentric circles. At the center stood the speaker's dais, currently occupied by the 12-limbed form of Xerelian High Speaker Catherine Elder, her translucent appendages rippling with the formal hues of session commencement. The 973rd Millennium Session of the Galactic Council is now in progress. Elder's voice resonated through the hall, automatically translated into the preferred neural frequency of each species present. The delegation of species designation Homo sapiens has requested speaking priority under Protocol 17. The chamber's subtle background hum of conversation ceased. Protocol 17 was rarely invoked, It signified matters of existential importance to a member species. Commander Winters approached the central speaking platform, her stride purposeful. The platform adjusted its height for her species, the only accommodation ever readily granted to humans in the Great Hall. She placed her hand on the verification scanner, and her credentials flashed across the massive displays encircling the chamber. "Esteemed council members," she began, her voice firm and clear. "For 3 centuries, humanity has participated in this august body with respect, deference, and hope for true cooperation. We have contributed our technologies, our unique perspectives, and our labor to the greater galactic community." The chamber remained silent. Hundreds of diverse sensory organs focused on the human representative. "Today, I come before you not with a petition, not with a request for reconsideration of our status, but with formal notification." She activated the quantum document, causing a holographic projection of Earth's official seal to materialize above the platform. Under Section 7-153 of the Membership Accords, I hereby submit humanity's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted. The Medusan's bioluminescent skin flashed rapid patterns of disbelief and protest. The granite-like granite representatives rumbled deep, vibrational objections that made the floor tremble. Xerelian Elder's translucent skin blanched to a pale blue, a sign of extreme shock in her species. "Order!" Elder's amplified voice cut through the chaos. "Commander Winters, the invocation of Section 7-153 is unprecedented. No species has ever—" "The precedent is irrelevant," Winters interrupted, a breach of protocol that sent another wave of murmurs through the assembly. "The section exists. Our legal right to invoke it is clear, and our decision is final." Ambassador Gregory stepped forward, joining Winters on the platform. "To clarify for those unfamiliar with the section in question," he said, his diplomatic training evident in his measured tone. Section 7-153 was included in the original membership accords as a safeguard against the very situation humanity now faces: developmental restriction without recourse or remedy. Director Murphy joined them, activating her own data display. "Our analysis indicates that under current Council restrictions, human technological development has been artificially suppressed by approximately 127 years compared to our natural innovation curve. Resource allocation has favored established members by a ratio of 17-1. The Granite Ambassador, a being resembling a moving sculpture of veined marble, rose from his seat. "Humans were accepted with generous terms. Your species was barely capable of interstellar travel when we elevated you to membership." "Elevated?" Security Chief Ford's laugh was sharp and without humor. "Is that what you call 3 centuries of regulated development and resource extraction? Your generosity came with chains carefully disguised as opportunity." The Quarren delegate, an avian species known for their straightforward assessments, extended their neck crest in a gesture of recognition. "The human delegation makes valid points under Council law. Section 7.153 indeed allows for unilateral withdrawal if a member species can demonstrate structural disadvantage. The provision was never removed because it was deemed theoretically impossible to meet the burden of proof." "We have met that burden," Winters stated, transmitting the full withdrawal document to the Council's central repository. "Our case is detailed in the accompanying 70,000-page analysis. Humanity withdraws from all Council treaties, technology sharing agreements, and defense pacts, effective immediately." The crystalline doors at the rear of the chamber slid open once more, and President Jason Hill of the United Earth Government entered, flanked by Vice President Melanie Ward and an honor guard of 12 officers. His presence, unexpected and unannounced, heightened the historical weight of the moment. "The withdrawal is not negotiable," President Hill announced, his voice carrying the authority of humanity's unified government. "We will, however, propose new terms for independent association should the Council wish to maintain diplomatic and trade relations with human worlds. Zarelian Elder's voice trembled with barely contained emotion, her translator struggling to convey the complex harmonics. This action endangers countless cooperative ventures. The Orion Trade Corridor alone will continue to function, Vice President Ward interjected smoothly, but under revised terms that reflect fair value exchange rather than exploitative ratios. The council chamber descended into heated debate, with species forming impromptu caucuses across the tiered seating. The human delegation stood firm at the center, the eye of a diplomatic storm that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. As the session extended into its fifth hour without resolution, Commander Winters transmitted the final coded signal to Earth Prime. Withdrawal delivered. Phase 1 complete. 3 months later, Alan Bennett, Chief Economic Officer for Humanity's Transitional Authority, studied the holographic projections floating above his desk in the Geneva complex. The numbers confirmed what he had predicted, and what the Council had vehemently denied would happen. 15% reduction in trade volume through the Orion Corridor, he announced to the assembled leadership team. And that's just the beginning. The Antares exchange shows a 22% drop in technological component transfers. Ambassador Carter, who had replaced the retired Gregory as humanity's senior diplomat, gestured toward a different set of metrics. More concerning is this pattern. The Council's primary navigation systems are experiencing cascading inefficiencies since our algorithmic engineers were withdrawn. The meeting room's atmosphere was tense, but not despondent. The economic pain had been anticipated. Indeed, it had been factored into humanity's withdrawal strategy. "How are our people holding up?" President Hill asked. His holographic presence projected from Washington. "Resolved," Commander Winters replied. "The public understanding that this is temporary hardship for long-term gain is holding at 78% approval. The expansion initiatives for our 12 worlds are proceeding ahead of schedule now that the Council's development restrictions have been lifted." Science Director Murphy manipulated the central display, bringing up a complex simulation. The more interesting development is here. Council species have become deeply dependent on human-designed adaptive algorithms over the centuries. Their systems were architected to require our engineers' ongoing input, supposedly for security, but actually creating a subtle dependency they never acknowledged. They're discovering that dependency now, Security Chief Ford added with grim satisfaction. 3 major Council transit hubs have reported navigation system failures in the past week alone. Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, recently promoted to tactical intelligence, entered the room with a priority data tablet. "Commanders, we're detecting unusual movement patterns in the Cygnus sector. Council military vessels are abandoning their patrol routes." The display shifted to show real-time tracking of dozens of Council ships altering course, creating visible gaps in the defensive perimeter that had protected Council space for millennia. "They're panicking," Ford observed, studying the patterns, "pulling back to protect core worlds." "At the expense of the periphery," Winters added, her expression thoughtful. Exactly as the strategic projection suggested. They never developed a flexible response doctrine because they never needed one. 3,000 years of overwhelming superiority made them rigid. President Hill's hologram leaned forward. "Is there any indication of external threats exploiting these gaps?" Rodriguez's expression darkened. "Yes, sir. We're detecting anomalous energy signatures from the galactic rim. Pattern matches nothing in our databases, but the Council vessels are giving them a wide berth." Murphy accessed the incoming sensor data, her specialized training allowing her to interpret the patterns faster than the others. "This is concerning. These signatures suggest technology operating on principles beyond conventional physics. The energy output alone exceeds anything in our records by an order of magnitude." "Identification?" Hill pressed. "Nothing concrete, but Council communication chatter references something called void heralds. The translation is approximate. Their actual designation contains frequencies outside human auditory range." Ford straightened. The Void Heralds are supposed to be a myth, a boogeyman story council species tell about ancient, extragalactic invaders who appear every few thousand years to harvest advanced civilizations. Myths often contain kernels of truth, Murphy observed, and if the council is reacting this strongly. President Hill's hologram flickered as he consulted with advisors off-screen. This changes our calculus. Convene an emergency session of the Global Security Council. I want options on the table within 24 hours. The hologram disappeared, leaving the team staring at the ominous patterns of retreating council vessels and the unknown entities advancing from the rim. They're leaving themselves exposed, Winters mused. 3 months of human withdrawal, and their entire defensive doctrine is collapsing. The question becomes, Ford replied, do we help them if these Void Heralds turn out to be real? 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Geneva complex had transformed from a diplomatic headquarters into what effectively functioned as a war room. The central chamber was filled with senior military and scientific personnel from all 12 human worlds, their attention fixed on the massive holographic display showing the advancement of crystalline vessels through former council space. The Void Heralds have penetrated to within 3 parsecs of Centauri Prime, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, highlighting the affected sector. They've encountered minimal resistance. Council forces are fragmented and uncoordinated. Dr. Samantha Powell, head of Xenotechnology Analysis, manipulated a separate display showing captured imagery of the invading forces. Their ships appear to be living crystal structures, silicon-based but with organic properties we don't fully understand. The most troubling aspect is their weapon systems. She enlarged an image of a council defensive platform being struck by a beam of shimmering energy. They're generating localized space-time distortions, essentially creating micro-singularities that tear apart matter at the quantum level. General Eric Barnes, Supreme Commander of Earth's Combined Defense Forces, studied the tactical displays with narrowed eyes. And the Council's response? Inadequate. Security Chief Ford replied bluntly. Their defensive doctrine relies on overwhelming force projection, a strategy that worked for millennia against conventional threats. But these heralds are using hit-and-run tactics, striking weak points and retreating before the Council can mass their forces. Commander Winters traced a pattern through the displayed incursions. There's intelligence behind these movements. They're not random attacks. They're systematically isolating Council sectors from each other, preventing unified response. The fundamental problem, Dr. Powell interjected, is that Council defensive systems are too centralized and rigid. They rely on predictive algorithms that cannot adapt to the Herald's seemingly random tactical shifts. Not random, General Barnes corrected, his eyes still on the display. Unpredictable but purposeful. There's a pattern here. They're avoiding direct confrontation with superior forces while maximizing damage to infrastructure and communication nodes. President Hill entered the chamber, followed by the newly formed Human Security Council. Dr. Powell, your assessment of the threat to human worlds. Powell straightened. Currently indirect, Mr. President. The Heralds haven't shown interest in human territories yet, but their pattern of expansion will bring them to our borders within approximately 4 months. And if we do nothing, based on their current effectiveness against Council defenses, and extrapolating from historical data about similar invasion patterns, Powell replied carefully. Complete collapse of Council space within 8 months, followed by systematic advance into human territory. Hill nodded grimly. Then we need to decide our position now, before the crisis reaches our doorstep. He turned to address the entire assembly. The Council has formally requested human assistance. After centuries of treating us as second-class members, they now recognize their dependence on our adaptive tactics and technologies. The chamber filled with murmurs, some indignant, others thoughtful. Many of you believe we should let them face the consequences of their arrogance. Hill continued, raising a hand for silence. That perspective has merit. However, we must consider the strategic implications of a council collapse. The Void Heralds represent an existential threat that will not stop at council borders. Ambassador Carter stepped forward. The council's terms for assistance are surprisingly favorable. They're offering recognition of full human independence, reparations for developmental restrictions, and preferential trading status. Desperation makes for generous negotiators, Ford observed dryly. General Barnes activated a tactical simulation. I've developed a preliminary response plan integrating human tactical flexibility with council defensive capabilities. Our strength has always been adaptation and improvisation, qualities the council systematically suppressed, but now desperately needs. The simulation showed human vessels operating in small, autonomous units, supported by larger council battle groups. The key is decentralized command and control. Council forces are accustomed to hierarchical directives from central command. We propose embedding human tactical officers throughout their fleet to enable real-time decision-making. There's another factor to consider, Director Murphy added. Several peripheral powers have also approached us with offers of alliance. Epsilon Aerodani, Century Prime, and the Morgalian Confluence. All were marginalized by the Council, in ways similar to humanity, though not as severely. A coalition of the oppressed, Vice President Ward mused. Poetic. But is it practical? Highly, General Barnes replied. These species developed innovative defensive technologies specifically because they couldn't rely on Council protection. The Aerodani phasing shields alone could provide crucial countermeasures against the Herald's quantum weapons. President Hill surveyed the room. The decision before us is clear, but difficult. Do we assist the very institution that constrained us for centuries, or do we stand aside and risk facing the Heralds alone after the Council falls? The debate raged for hours, with passionate arguments on both sides. Some, like Security Chief Ford, argued that the Council deserved its fate. Others, including Commander Winters, pointed out that pragmatism must override justified resentment. As the discussion reached its peak, an urgent communication interrupted the proceedings. The main display shifted to show a live feed from the observation post at Proxima Centauri. Emergency priority transmission, the station commander reported, her voice tense. A Herald crystalline fleet has just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of our sensor range. They're on direct course for the Proxima colony. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. The room fell silent. It seems, President Hill said quietly, that the decision has been made for us. The battle for the Outer Rim began 3 days later, with the Starship Defiance leading a hastily assembled coalition fleet against the advancing Herald forces. Captain Ryan Collins stood on the command deck, surveying the tactical display with calm determination despite the overwhelming odds. Status report, he ordered, as the Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the designated coordinates. Council reinforcements are holding position at Sector 7, his executive officer reported. Aerodani and Century vessels are moving into flanking positions as planned. Herald fleet is maintaining course toward the Proxima colony. 57 crystalline vessels detected. Collins nodded. Begin implementation of Operation Controlled Chaos. Throughout the combined fleet, human tactical officers embedded with Council vessels transmitted the revolutionary battle plan. For millennia, Council military doctrine had emphasized precision, predictability, and overwhelming force, qualities that had proven disastrously ineffective against the Herald's adaptive attacks. Operation Controlled Chaos was the antithesis of everything the Council believed about warfare. It emphasized random course changes, variable attack patterns, and decentralized decision-making that allowed each vessel to respond independently to tactical developments. They're not following the protocol, a Zarelian commander protested over the comm channel. The tactical pattern requires synchronization across all units. That's exactly what the Heralds are counting on, Collins replied calmly. Break formation. Execute random jump sequences within the designated engagement envelope. Trust your human advisors. The Council vessels hesitated, generations of military tradition warring with the desperate need for a new approach. Slowly, the rigid formation began to dissolve as individual commanders embraced the human tactics. The Herald fleet approached, their crystalline structures refracting starlight in hypnotic patterns. As they came within weapons range, they began their standard attack sequence, concentrated fire designed to eliminate the command vessels they had identified through previous encounters with Council forces. But this time, there was no clear command structure to target. The Coalition fleet moved in seemingly chaotic patterns, vessels jumping in and out of hyperspace for split-second intervals, attacking from unexpected vectors before disappearing again. They're confused, Dr. Powell observed from her station aboard the Defiance, monitoring the Herald's energy signatures. Their attack algorithms are searching for patterns to exploit, but finding none. The first Herald vessel shattered under concentrated fire from 3 different directions, its crystalline structure unable to adapt to the unpredictable attack vectors. Others soon followed, their previously unstoppable advance faltering against the Coalition's organized chaos. "They're attempting to recalibrate," Powell reported, her eyes fixed on the sensor readings. "Energy fluctuations suggest they're communicating with each other, trying to develop a counter-strategy." Captain Collins nodded. "As expected, Lieutenant Commander Garcia, signal all vessels to implement Phase 2. Just as the Heralds began to adapt to the Coalition's tactics, the entire fleet shifted to an entirely different approach, concentrating forces in a classic pincer movement that would have made ancient naval commanders proud. The abrupt shift from extreme disorder to perfect coordination caught the Heralds mid-adaptation. "Their response time is degrading," Powell noted with professional satisfaction. "Each tactical shift forces them to restart their analytical process." The battle raged for hours, with the Coalition forces constantly shifting between different tactical paradigms, sometimes operating as a unified force, sometimes as independent units, never presenting the same pattern long enough for the Heralds to develop an effective counter-strategy. The turning point came when a combined strike force of human, Aerodani, and Council vessels executed a precisely coordinated attack on the largest Herald ship, a massive crystalline structure that seemed to function as a central coordinator. The Aerodani phase shields protected the attack force from the Herald's space-time distortion weapons, long enough for specialized munitions to penetrate the crystalline hull. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but the shockwave of crystalline fragments and energy discharge registered on every sensor in the fleet. The remaining Herald vessels seemed to hesitate, their movements becoming less coordinated. "They're retreating," the executive officer announced, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. "All remaining Herald vessels are breaking engagement and accelerating toward the Galactic rim." Captain Collins allowed himself a small smile. "Pursuit course." "Inadvisable," Dr. Powell interjected. "Energy readings suggest they may be preparing a long-range space-time distortion as a parting gift. Recommend maintaining distance." Collins nodded. "All vessels hold position. Maintain defensive posture." The Coalition fleet watched as the Herald vessels accelerated to light speed and disappeared, leaving behind the debris of their destroyed companions and a newfound respect between species that had previously regarded each other with suspicion or contempt. "Transmission from Council High Command," the communications officer reported. "They're expressing gratitude." "That must have been difficult for them," Collins replied dryly. "Inform them that the human delegation will meet to discuss terms for ongoing cooperation." The negotiations took place 1 month later in the neutral territory of Centauri Prime, with representatives from all Coalition members present. The Great Hall of the Council had been temporarily abandoned, its symbolic importance diminished by recent events. Commander Winters led the human delegation, supported by Ambassador Carter, Science Director Murphy, and Security Chief Ford. Across the circular table sat Zarelian High Speaker Catherine Elder and representatives from the Council's remaining loyal species, significantly fewer than had been present at the withdrawal ceremony 6 months earlier. "The threat has not been eliminated," Elder began, her translator conveying the gravity in her harmonic speech. "The heralds have retreated, but historical records suggest they will return with greater numbers. Those records were classified beyond human access during our membership," Ford noted with pointed emphasis, "along with much else that might have benefited our mutual security." Elder's skin flushed a deep purple, embarrassment in her species. "Past policies were misguided. The Council recognizes this now." "Recognition is insufficient," Commander Winters stated firmly. "Human assistance in establishing a sustainable defense against the Heralds comes with non-negotiable conditions." She activated a holographic display showing the proposed terms: full recognition of human independence, substantial reparations for 3 centuries of development restrictions, and equal partnership status with the Council rather than subordinate membership. "These terms are unprecedented," a Granite representative rumbled. "As is the current situation," Ambassador Carter replied smoothly. "The old Council structure has failed its first serious test in millennia. Either it evolves, or it collapses entirely. Many member species have already withdrawn or significantly reduced their participation," Elder acknowledged, her appendages shifting in a gesture of resignation. "The Council as it existed for 30,000 years is already fundamentally altered." "Then build something better from the ruins," Winters suggested, her tone softening slightly. "The coalition that defeated the Heralds provides a model: equal partnership with distributed authority rather than centralized control." The negotiations continued for weeks, with the fundamental structure of galactic governance being reimagined in real time. The Council representatives, initially resistant to such dramatic change, gradually accepted the reality of their new position. Without human tactical adaptability and the specialized technologies of the peripheral powers, they could not hope to survive a renewed Herald offensive. The agreement that eventually emerged, formally titled the Centauri Accords, but quickly nicknamed the Galactic Concordat by human media, established a fundamentally different relationship between species. The Council would continue to exist, but as a cooperative forum rather than a governing body. Technology sharing would be equitable rather than restricted, and colonial development would be limited only by ethical considerations rather than arbitrary quotas. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the once magnificent Great Hall of the Council stood mostly empty, with fewer than 50 species maintaining regular participation in its deliberations. The true center of galactic cooperation had shifted to the newly constructed Coalition Command on Centauri Prime, where human officers worked alongside Terran strategists, Tone engineers, Morgalian scientists, and even some forward-thinking Council species to develop an integrated defense system against future Herald incursions. "Remarkable how quickly things change," Ambassador Carter observed as he and Commander Winters toured the facility. 1 year ago, we were petitioning for basic recognition of our capabilities. Winters nodded, watching a mixed team of human and alien engineers install a new tactical coordination system. 1 year ago, the Council believed its dominance was eternal. Complacency is always the harbinger of collapse. "Do you think they'll return, the Heralds?" Dr. Powell's analysis suggests it's inevitable. Their retreat wasn't defeat. It was tactical withdrawal to recalibrate. Winters gestured toward the bustling command center. "But next time, we'll be ready, not as subordinates implementing Council directives, but as equals contributing our unique strengths." Carter smiled. "From second-class citizens to saviors of galactic civilization. Not bad for a year's work." "We didn't save them," Winters corrected. "We showed them a better way forward. Whether they embrace it fully remains to be seen." 5 years after humanity's historic withdrawal, President Laura Mitchell stood beside Zarelian High Speaker Catherine Elder beneath the soaring dome of the new Concordat Assembly on Earth, a symbolic location that would have been unthinkable half a decade earlier. Above them, the names of all participating species were inscribed in equal size, a visual representation of the new balance of power. Today marks not an ending, but a transition. President Mitchell announced to the assembled representatives of over 200 species, many of whom had never participated in the old council. The crisis that began with humanity's withdrawal and continued with the Herald incursion has transformed into an opportunity for genuine cooperation. Elder's translator conveyed her harmonics with new subtlety, the technology having been refined through true collaboration rather than imposed standardization. The Galactic Council served its purpose for 30 millennia, providing stability through structure, but structures that cannot adapt eventually collapse under their own weight. The Concordat that replaced the Council bore little resemblance to its predecessor. Authority was distributed rather than centralized, with rotating leadership and specialized committees that leveraged the unique strengths of each member species. Humans provided adaptive tactical doctrine and creative problem-solving. Aerodani contributed their phasing technology. Terrans offered their unparalleled computational capabilities. And even the former council species found new roles that emphasized their strengths rather than perpetuating their dominance. The heralds will return, Mitchell acknowledged, addressing the concern that remained foremost in many minds. But when they do, they will face not a rigid hierarchy, but a diverse alliance, thousands of worlds united not by submission to central authority, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. As the assembly concluded, Commander Winters, now Admiral Winters, Supreme Commander of Coalition Defense Forces, observed the proceedings from a discreet position near the rear of the chamber. Beside her stood Security Chief Ford, his expression thoughtful. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you delivered the withdrawal notice?" he asked quietly. Winters considered the question. "Not specifically, but I knew something had to break for anything better to emerge." "The Council was right about one thing," Ford mused. "Everything did collapse when humanity left." "Yes," Winters agreed, watching as representatives of formerly antagonistic species engaged in animated discussion about joint projects. "Everything collapsed, and from the ruins, we built something stronger." Outside the assembly hall, the first stars of evening became visible in Earth's sky. Somewhere beyond them, void heralds were regrouping. Evolution was continuing its relentless progression, and new challenges were forming that would test the nascent alliance in ways no one could predict. But for the first time in centuries, humanity faced the future, neither as subordinates seeking approval, nor as rebels fighting oppression, but as equal partners in a genuinely cooperative enterprise. The path forward remained uncertain, but it would be navigated together, diverse species contributing their unique perspectives to create solutions no single approach could provide. As delegates dispersed to their respective vessels and embassies, Admiral Winters stepped outside to view the stars that had once seemed to offer unlimited promise, then had represented constraint, and now held renewed possibility. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Ford asked, joining her. Winters nodded, her expression resolute yet hopeful. "Always. That's humanity's greatest strength. We adapt, we evolve, we persist. And now, finally, we've taught the galaxy to do the same." Above them, a Concordat patrol vessel streaked across the sky, a visible symbol of the new order they had helped create. Its crew included humans, former council species, and representatives from worlds that had never been permitted a voice in galactic affairs before the collapse. Together, they watched over a galaxy fundamentally transformed, not through conquest or dominance, but through the painful yet necessary process of letting an outmoded system collapse so that something better could rise in its place.